I'm joined now by Niall Dickson, Chief Executive of the NHS Confederation, to find out how important this protective equipment is. Good evening, Niall. Thank you for joining us. In terms of protective equipment, on a night where we've been clapping the NHS across the country, how many people are still left wanting, if you like, in this frontline battle?
Well, as far as protective equipment's concerned, I think it's fair to say that there has been almost a breakdown in confidence among quite a lot of doctors and nurses and frontline staff, a kind of fear that the equipment that they need will not be there. And part of the reason for that is that the original supply chain, which was set up to deal with this, simply couldn't cope with demand. Now, my understanding is that the NHS has, in effect, taken over the government-owned company that was running that. They're now using the army, and you are seeing very significant numbers, 7 million masks on Wednesday and on Thursday, delivered into the NHS. So I think the supplies are starting to come through, but of course it will take some time, I think, to rebuild that sense of confidence. And I think there are still issues about the nature of the equipment and the advice that's being given. And again, I'm not saying that what the centre is doing is wrong, but the communication down to staff on the front line, I think, has been wanting. And we really need some very clear guidance, an explanation of, for example, why there are minor differences, not major differences, but minor differences, for example, between UK guidance, which in some ways is more stringent than WHO, but not in all areas, and the WHO guidance. And that makes, I think, professional staff very concerned that perhaps the reason why they're being advised to wear one thing and another is not because of good clinical reasons, but because either there's a shortage of staff or a shortage of money or a shortage of equipment. And I think rebuilding that confidence is going to be absolutely essential in the weeks and months ahead.
Is it morally right to ask people to go to work if they don't have the correct protective equipment? We wouldn't, we hope, send our soldiers to war without the right defences, and war is being invoked by our political leaders again and again.
No, of course it's not right. And indeed, it's another thing to say, well, you should have had all this equipment ready. We did actually have very significant stockpiles. We had a pandemic flu stockpile, and then we did an additional stockpile of no-deal Brexit stuff that we had as well. So we had very significant stockpiles. The other problem is, though, that the manufacture of this stuff is generally in Asia and China, and therefore, of course, ensuring that supply over the longer term will be a significant challenge. So at the moment, we're told there are enough supplies, and it partly depends, I guess, on the scale of the pandemic and how far it hits us. And that probably is the really big question that we will have to wait 2 or 3 weeks to see whether we really are hit. We'll be hit by very not high numbers of cases anyway, but whether it is such a huge number that the system simply can't cope.
But I was just going to say,
still up in the air.
Of course, but just finally, Neil, why should you go to work if you haven't got the equipment there?
Well, I don't think any staff should go into a clinical situation where they believe that they are not safe in terms of treating that patient. I think that's a perfectly reasonable thing. The service should be providing people with the right level of equipment in the right situation, and that will vary depending on the location, depending on the kind of procedure that they're performing, and with the symptoms that that individual patient is showing. But you're absolutely right. The service should provide people with that equipment. We're told that the equipment is, as we speak, rolling in lorries down into the service at the moment, but we will have to see over the next few weeks and months about whether they're able to sustain that level and whether people have the right equipment on the ground.
Niall Dickson, thank you.